Hi everyone, I'm Jiyu Kim and I'm the Regional Director for the Boulder, Colorado region of the Back to Bach project. When musicians play together in small groups, we say that they are playing chamber music. And while playing music in chamber groups allows for close collaboration between the musicians in the ensemble, chamber groups can also perform with soloists. This is the concept of mixed chamber performances, which are solo performances accompanied by a chamber group, not a full orchestra. We are excited to kick off our year with this mixed chamber production featuring the bassoon. We will introduce 3 pieces written for bassoon, among other instruments. Antonio Vivaldi's Concerto for Bassoon and Cello in E minor, Mikhail Glinka's Trio Pathétique in D minor, and the Petite Romance from Niccolò Paganini's Duet No. 3 in C major for violin and bassoon.
Born in 1678 in Venice, Antonio Vivaldi is considered one of the most prolific and accomplished composers of the Baroque era. Besides his famous Four Seasons, Vivaldi wrote some 800 other works, ranging from concertos to chorales to operas. Of these, 39 were bassoon concertos, either for solo bassoon or in a duet form. This was very unique because the bassoon itself was only developed in the mid-17th century, and to this day, there are fewer bassoon concertos than for other instruments. Many composers were piano or string musicians themselves and tended to focus on those instruments in their compositions, so it was rare to find a concerto featuring bassoon. It took until the 1900s for more composers to begin writing bassoon concertos, but Vivaldi wrote some amazing ones in the 1600s and 1700s.
This Vivaldi concerto for bassoon and cello incorporates solo, duet, and group sections. It is particularly interesting because both instruments are lower register instruments. Lower register instruments, especially the bassoon, usually play supporting harmonies in chamber ensembles, but here they both carry the melody. The bassoon and cello also have ranges closer to that of the human voice, so we think that it is possible that Vivaldi chose these instruments as soloists to bring a human aspect to the piece.
Although 2 lower register instruments play a soloist in this concerto, they still create distinct voices and textures. The bassoon is a wind instrument, and the sound it produces is stately yet mourning. The cello is a string instrument, and its sound is mellow and sentimental. This piece is in the key of E minor, which creates a pervading melancholic feeling. The soloist's parts bring elegiac elements to the piece, but when the group ostinato cuts in, the movement gains urgency and a feeling of trepidation.
we are introducing is Mikhail Glinka's 1827 Trio Pathétique, played by violin, bassoon, and piano. Originally, Glinka wrote the trio for clarinet, bassoon, and piano, one of the only works for this instrumentation, but Glinka's publisher insisted that he also write a more standard version for the violin. Glinka is commonly known as the father of Russian classical music and the founder of Russian nationalist music, because he was the first to use Russian folk melodies as themes in his music. He was trained by the Irish virtuoso pianist John Field in St. Petersburg and went on to study in Germany and Italy. His music was a great source of inspiration for later Russian composers, including Rimsky-Korsakov, Borodin, and Tchaikovsky.
Glinka wrote his Trio Pathétique right after he finished studying with John Field. It uses a classical Viennese structure, but incorporates a Russian folk melody, which probably he heard from some surf musicians. The piece is particularly lyrical, and it was probably influenced by the other works he was composing at the time, all mostly for voice. We will play the first movement, the Allegro Moderato, which is in the style of early Romanticism. In this movement, the violin and the bassoon's serenade comes out from the piano's ripples.
Niccolò Paganini was the most celebrated Italian violin virtuoso of the late 1700s and is one of the pillars of modern violin technique, particularly through his 24 solo violin caprices. Paganini also wrote many collaborative works for violin and other instruments, his most famous being those for violin and guitar. Paganini's 3 duet works for violin and bassoon are exciting because the bassoon was an instrument that had just been developed during Paganini's time. The duets were thought to be lost but were discovered by Italian musicologist Flavio Noguera in 1990. According to Paganini's autobiography, they were written because an unidentified Swedish bassoonist had begged him to write something difficult for the instrument, which, according to the bassoonist, had no virtuosic music.
We will play the Petite Romance of Paganini's 3rd duet for violin and bassoon. It is a short, somber movement that, while still sweet like its marking of dolce, carries a defeated-sounding spirit, as the piece is in D minor. It serves as a break for the musicians between the 2 highly virtuosic movements before and after it. Interestingly, the bassoon starts the movement with the main melody, rather than the violin, and although the 2 instruments do trade off their melody and accompaniment roles, the bassoon also gets the last word of the piece, perhaps hinting at Paganini's affection for bassoon. The simple starting theme and variations in between seems to be Paganini's favorite musical form, as many of his caprices were written using it.
Although these historical examples of mixed chamber music with bassoon are fun to explore, unfortunately, modern composers still don't produce as much bassoon repertoire as for other instruments. Usually, the bassoon can be found in the back of symphony orchestras, but we hope that the instrument can be brought to center stage in the future. For your further listening, some notable examples of bassoon concertos are listed on the screen. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.